Welcome to the weekly swing low. It's July 19th, 2025. Let's get into our usual tickers. We're going to start today with Ethereum, actually. We're actually looking at right here the ratio of Ethereum to Bitcoin. I think this is important to look at. These ratio charts, just in general, are helpful. We're starting with Ethereum because this is the thing that I would say you want to start paying attention to. We'll talk about all the regular tickers, of course, as well. Bigger picture, we're stretched in a daily cycle for the broader market, so we'll see. We'll see where we get the top there. But let's look at Ethereum versus Bitcoin for a bit. This thing has just been sagging for the longest time. Look at this droop. So you have this like ugly double top here. So that's December 2021, and then you kind of double tap that September 2022, and then it's just drooped for that whole time. And then a really beautiful thing happened in April when the broader market bottomed, that April 7th bottom. We got a beautiful monthly swing low from on the ratio. And we talked about this in real time. You can see that's why this line is here. The following month, we got a little follow through. That was June. And this month, we're getting our night, or excuse me, we did not get follow through the following month. We got a consolidation. This is just an inside candle. Notice it does not make a higher high. It also doesn't make a lower low. It's nowhere near a lower low, actually. It's consolidating at the upper end of the range. On a lower time frame, that usually looks like a bull flag. And then we make this new higher high on July, and we still have a few days to trade. But I expect that this is the beginning of a long-term uptrend, right? I mean, long-term is actually very relative because I do think Bitcoin is heading towards its 4-year cycle high. And when it makes its high, I have a hard time believing Ethereum is just going to keep powering through. But we'll see. I'm not here to make predictions, but I would expect to see something like this in, again, to that point, not making predictions, but this is what you expect to see, right? Like just visually, this is what this is setting up, right? You probably have a month at some point where you have some consolidation, but generally, you're expecting to see something like this, right? Over the next several months. I would say into the Bitcoin top, which is the interesting thing, right? Bitcoin is going to be rising into its 4-year cycle high, and I think Ethereum is going to be outperforming it the whole way, which means Ethereum is going to be going crazy. And when I say Ethereum, I really mean ETH. You can buy it on any exchange now, and of course you can buy the ETF, ETH. Actually, there are several ETFs. The big one, the BlackRock one, is ETHA, ETHA. And then there are also leveraged ones like ETHU, ETHU, which is 2x. That's the one I've been playing in the traditional markets. I have like actual ETH like on chain as well. But this is what I would expect, something like this over the next several months. And that doesn't mean Bitcoin is going to be going down. It just means ETH will be going up faster. Let's look at the ETH chart now, like the actual chart, the absolute chart. So similar to Bitcoin in terms of your weekly, and of course this is your April 7th bottom, right? That bottom on the ratio chart was also a bottom in absolute terms, which is not surprising. That's what you often see. We are in week 14, so it's not super early in the weekly cycle, to be clear. But look what this thing has done, right? It spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks consolidating, which is actually the same exact thing the ratio chart did. This is the ratio chart. So while it was consolidating on the absolute chart, which is not surprising, right, that you're going to see a similar pattern, all that to say, this looks like it's still relatively early because this is just all consolidation and we have a breakout. This is your ratio chart. And then you go back to the absolute chart, same kind of thing. I would argue this was actually your breakout, and then this is like your follow through candle, right? Because once this candle broke above these highs, these ugly wicks, so the highest of these highs is 2880. That was your go signal, and then you got follow through here that next week. And so tactically speaking, if we like actually very tactically speaking, we zoom into the 4-hour chart. Let's see what's kind of happening here. Oh, nice little bull flag, right? Very clear. Look at that kind of slope. So to be clear, this is a little swing high once we crossed below 3578, which is not terrible news. That is actually just gives you a very actionable trade, right? So once we can break back above that level, that is a very good that's a very good upside signal, right? Like you imagine you're going to see a candle at some point that's going to do something like this, again, tactically speaking, that's your go signal. This bull flag is about to break out. This could keep filling out for several more. And again, each of these candles is 4 hours. This could keep filling out for several more candles. But that's what I would expect, a move higher there. And in terms of the daily, how long have we been rallying? So this is your clear low here. Let me just adjust this chart. This is day 27. Okay. So in the past, this thing has rallied for like 45, 50 days. So we could still rally quite a bit in this daily cycle, which is also the weekly, and extend the weekly cycle. If you look back at the past, good kind of reference point here. Look at this weekly cycle. Look at that baby. Whew, that's nice. That was a top on week 22. That is a beautiful little move up. You have this nice little move up, this little consolidation, ugly for us trading. This wick, imagine how many people got caught in this thing, and imagine how many people sold around here, and then whoop, takes you back up. And then you kind of went into no man's land. This big downdraft, lower high. See, that's lower high. So all that to say, there is a lot of supply up here. So I imagine when we get back up here, which is basically, call it 4,000 round number resistance, 4,100, I expect that we're going to see some kind of pullback. Like, imagine how many people are waiting to get their money back from up here. Like, psychologically, that's what we're talking about, right? Like, so that's going to be probably an opportunity tactically to get in, like on the pullback around 4,000 would be my guess. But like, just for context, right? Like, Ethereum, the network, has a market cap, and look this up. Use an LLM, do some research, but the network has a market cap of $427 billion, $428 billion. You now have companies, Nvidia is a 4 trillion market cap, Apple is a 3.1, Microsoft 3.8, Amazon 2.4, and of course you have gold, the asset, 22 trillion. All that to say, we're talking about an asset that isn't even 500 billion yet. And it's a gigantic network. And so that tells me this thing could, like, the trillion is easy, right? And that would be a double up from here. Bitcoin, just for reference, is at 2.3 trillion, right? So just to catch up to Bitcoin, it would have to literally quadruple, right? Just like, that's the math, right? Bitcoin is over 2 trillion. We're under 5 Ethereum is under 500 billion, excuse me. So just keep that reference point. Like, this thing can just kind of moon for quite a bit. And again, just like zooming out, like, we didn't really look at the monthly chart. Like, if we zoom out, you can kind of see this, like, this was the last meaningful all-time high back in 2021. We're talking about 4 years here, right? So once this thing blows, we're going to have price discovery. 10,000 is the number that people are throwing around. We'll see. Again, we're not here to make predictions. So that's Ethereum. I won't spend too much more time on that. That's the one to put on your radar if it's not already. And of course, you have King Bitcoin. It's consolidating here. It's been consolidating since this little swing high here, after it made that all-time high to 123,000, just above. So that swing high is active below 118,949. That's your number there. And so, very clear, right? You want to see a candle break above that, something like that. And I think we'll see that. I mean, you can see several candles have tried. Like, you can see, that's why I drew this line here, so you can kind of clearly see it. And they've failed, right? Wick. Now we're at the lower end of the range of this one. So you just have to wait and watch. The high for today so far is 118,564. So that becomes your first kind of line in the sand. So that's Bitcoin. I think a similar, again, as I kind of alluded to in the Ethereum kind of preamble, I think we're moving to our 4-year cycle high here. I would expect us to get that later this year for Bitcoin. All right, let's move on to the broader markets. The update here is just we're continuing. We made another higher high on the S&P. We did close red on Friday, but we're now on day 37, right? We're extended. Now, it's entirely possible that this was a little tiny daily cycle low. You see this. We didn't close below the 10-day moving average, to be fair. I guess actually technically we did close below it to that July 15th. and then we made a lower low, but then we recovered. So it's possible this is a sneaky daily cycle low, and so we're now on day two. That would be the bull case, not my base case at all, but something to watch for. But just very clear line in the sand. I would say, your low for Friday was $626.46. So you want to watch that. Any close below that, and you have a daily swing high in place. And in terms of your weekly, I think that was week 13. Is that right? Week 14. So we could still run. I mean, there's no reason. It's not like we're on week 20 or week 18. We could easily run for several more weeks. We've had, tops on week 17. We've had several tops on week like 19, 22, 20 in that neighborhood. So we can easily keep running. We're not super late. And on the weekly, you can kind of see this is really just consolidation, right? It made a slight higher high on the weekly, but nothing kind of like this higher high or like these higher highs back here. And so all of this is set up for, I don't know, like there is a real possibility this is a little sneaky little daily cycle low. So you want to watch for that on the bull side. All right, let's look at the other indices. Same picture, but just different levels. So for the Qs, also made a new all-time high on Friday, but closed red as well. That low is $559.98. That's the Qs. Dow did not make a higher high on Friday. These are important things to kind of note, right? When it doesn't do that. Now, this is the interesting thing here, right? Now, this is very interesting. If you look at the Dow, this is DIA, the ticker DIA, the ETF. This looks much more like a daily cycle low happened, right? You have your top on July 3rd. You have your swing high that's next day because you close below that low at $445.39, right? Like right there. And then you just continue this little downtrend, right? You go down, you make this little lower high, you make another lower low, and now you got the swing low. So as long as this thing remains DIA above $442.43, we actually have a potential daily cycle low in play for DIA. And that lends credence to the idea that maybe the broader market made a sneaky little daily cycle low that same day as well. Very interesting. IWM didn't make, actually, IWM is very far from making a new all-time high, but it didn't make a new local high either. You can see here, the high still stands at July 10th, and that's a swing high is active below $222.86. Of course, the other possibility for DIA is that this little move is just going to be another lower high. Remember that, that's important as well. Same count on the weekly as well for DIA. It's the same count across the indices. Let's look at SMH. So SMH did make a higher high. Oh no, it did not. It did not. It's a little double top. So the all-time high is $293.20. We stopped like $1 short of that. And the low here on Friday was $289.33. So you want to be aware of that. This is kind of like an ugly little pattern on the weekly. This really suggests we need a bit of a pullback here. Like we need to see something I'd love to see something like this, right? And then something like this. That becomes your entry point, right? To just kind of wash out this. This does not look healthy to me. Just like looking at many charts over many assets, that's something that needs to be corrected. That's SMH. So let's look at Dixie. So Dixie is just trying to hold up here, right? So it made a little, we talked about this last week. It formed a little weekly swing low by closing above $96 and 96.38. And now we have follow through, right? We made another higher high on the weekly chart. Now, what you want to watch for is that this becomes a lower high. So next week, you get something like this. In order for that to happen, we have to close below 97.71. So that's what I'm watching for. If we don't do that, we do the reverse, either consolidate or make another higher high. That is the possibility that we do have a weekly cycle low here. Notice we did not close above the 10-period moving average. We actually got a little wick, so we tried. And on the daily, more important to kind of watch this, we have a potential daily cycle high in play here, right? So we have this rally to day 12, right? You have this bearish outside candle, right? And then you tried to rally up, failed, but this is complicated action, right? So right now, you've got to stay above 98.10. That's the low here, because basically price tried to make a higher high and failed. Then it tried to make a lower low, it also failed. So you basically have a tie here, and so you need a candle that's going to break the tie. Right, like do something like this, like stay away from this low, or conversely, something that does something that does this, right? Like it's gonna break the détente, like either below this or either above that, right? Like it's pretty simple at that point, and that tells you whether this is a daily cycle high. And if this is a daily cycle high, then that tells you this is probably not a weekly cycle low, and this is just going to be a lower high, and we're going to roll over. And then bigger picture, the monthly is still green. That's important. This is trying to form a little sort of false breakdown on a very high time frame, so important to watch. What about the 10-year Treasury yield? Wow, nothing burger on the weekly chart. Still consolidation. Week 15, I believe it was, that we just closed out. So getting long in the tooth here. And on the daily, it did form a swing high. That's important. So by closing below 4.44, that is a daily swing high. You can see that. You can see that. You can see that chart there, right? You can see that line there, very clear. Okay, so that's the U.S. 10-year, really kind of going nowhere. What about oil? So oil is consolidating here. Wow, that's an ugly consolidation. Look at the last 5 days. Yikes. So it's got to stay above $65.45 on the daily. And on the weekly, that just formed consolidation at the lower end of the range of this big red bearish outside candle. Right, like notice this candle makes a higher high, also makes a lower low. And now you have 3 weeks of consolidation at the lower end of the range. The high we need to break above is $69.61, right? You need to see a candle do something like this, right? Until it does that, this is all just a potential bear flag before new lower lows. That is oil. TLT is trying to prove itself here, or actually here. So yeah, it's trying to form a little low here. So look at this weekly. We have a swing high in place. We talked about that last week by closing below $86.85. But we're now trying to hold this low above $84.19. That gives you a clear line in the sand. On the daily, we have a clear weekly daily cycle low in place, or daily cycle low in motion. So we made this lower low, lower high, another lower low. And so now I expect, you think about where we are in the count. So that was day 26. We're getting day 36, day 38, right? So the only problem is that this was such a long rally, so that if this is going to be left translated, we're going to get a decline that's at least 26 days, which means we could decline for another few weeks. But bigger picture, more importantly, the big question is this a weekly cycle low? I guess at this point, now that we've rallied for, let's say this is a weekly cycle low, that would make this week 6. So it's actually maybe even more bearish if this is a weekly cycle low and this is just a new weekly cycle that's rolling over early on week 6. So that's the important thing to watch for. Bitcoin and ETH, we already talked about. Gold is not making much progress in this new daily cycle. I believe it's day 13. Yeah, it's day 13, and look, it's just kind of going sideways, right? I'll get rid of these lines so it's easier to see. Not really doing much. At this point, we have this high here that was made back on Wednesday. It's got to, if it closes below 33.19, thereabouts, it would form a daily swing high. Bigger picture, I do think, just like Bitcoin, gold is moving into its longer term cycle high. But look at what it's done in the last 3 months, right? This is just consolidation. So this candle is inside this candle. This candle is basically inside this one, and this one is inside this one. So this is basically 3 months of inside candles, an inside candle, inside candle, inside candle, which means this thing is going to burst, right? Like this is consolidation ready to burst. Now, the catch is that could go in either direction. It doesn't have to be higher, but I would suspect, my expectation is that this is it happens to in that direction into our 8-year cycle high that we probably get later this year along with Bitcoin. Not saying it happens exactly the same time, but probably in that same neighborhood. In terms of the weekly, that would put us at week 9. And GDX is doing a similar thing. So GDX week 9 as well. I'll update that. And for GDX, we are sitting potentially below a little swing high on the weekly. That's important. It's got to get back above $51.47. This line here, very clear. So that becomes an important signal for you. On the daily, I'll clear this up a little bit. Yeah, similar to the gold, right? Like not really making a whole lot of progress. In fact, kind of rolling over a little bit. This candle Friday is all the makings of something that wants to become a bearish compound outside candle, right? Like it made a higher high, but then started to fail and just ran out of time. And so you would think, like statistically, most likely, this next candle closes the deal, right? And so we close below $50.45. That's kind of what this suggests. But at this point, I feel like this is more of a no signal. It's kind of meandering sideways, essentially. Silver is showing more promise just in general, bigger picture. I've said this on every update for a while. Just look at the bigger picture chart. I'll remove all this stuff. But you can see it hasn't traded at these levels for years, like over a decade, right? That's super bullish. And if we look at the weekly, doji on the weekly, that makes the levels very clear. You have your low at $37.51 and your high at $39.13. You'll have an equivalent level on SLV or what have you. That's your simple line in the sand. For silver, notice looks much healthier than gold and the other ones, right? This is your low for silver. I mean, this is your higher low. Like so it depends on kind of where you mark it, but basically the same count, day 13, except this is more of a bull flag, and you have a very nice little risk reward here. You just have to stay above that level. Very, very simple, right? It's got to stay above $37.51, right? Preserve this bull flag, or better yet, break down below it and then a recapture, right? Something like that. Super bullish. That can become your entry, something somewhere around that. So that's silver. Let's move on to platinum. Platinum just hasn't been able to quit. My goodness, it's just running. Look at this weekly chart. We finally get a green week, and it's a doji. That's important. So similar to silver, right? That's interesting. The low is $1,390.87, and the high is $1,491.86. Very clear line in the sand on that weekly chart. And on the daily, this thing has just been powering through. But look at this pattern: a big red candle followed by some consolidation on the lower end, and then a slight higher high, another red candle. So if this pattern holds, you would expect that we get some more consolidation on the lower end of this candle, which is around 1442. But man, this thing just will not quit. And bigger picture, like this thing is like this is your monthly chart. You can see this thing basically moved sideways for 30 months. Wow. And we're just on the second month of the breakout. So this is your absolute, I mean, the catch here is that this obviously could fizzle out quickly, but after 30 months of consolidation, you would expect you're going to get more than just 2 months of upside, right? Like off of this little hammer. And so the low on this month is $1,327.87. You can kind of play that once we finally get this daily cycle decline, that becomes a level that you can play off of. That, call it 1330 in that neighborhood, right? Like imagine you get a chance to buy a candle that does something like this in the coming months, right? Like that's a great opportunity. That's platinum. And we'll close out with natural gas and then uranium. So natural gas, we have a little swing low in play. We have a little daily cycle rally happening. So we're on day 7 of the daily cycle. And on the weekly, we're holding above. Look at this nice little double bottom. So the double bottom at 3.08. That's your low that you've got to hold. But you really haven't made much progress this weekly cycle. The catch, the flip side, the positive end of that is that this consolidation can be fuel for a nice big move higher. And we're relatively early in a new daily cycle, so that's good. Uranium keeps moving higher. Let's look at CCJ first. So CCJ had 2 weeks of consolidation on the weekly, and then it's resumed higher. It's week 14. As I've said in past updates, that's a long time for it to rally on the weekly. So definitely I'm a little cautious here, but bigger picture, we're just on month 3 of a new long-term cycle. Look at this bottom here, sweeping these lows. And so I think you can hold here, right? Just like control your position size because we are going to get a bigger decline at some point. But that said, on the daily chart, you have this little decline behind you, and we're now on day, looks like day 6. So that's the catch, right? Like we're early in a new daily cycle. Of course, daily cycles can always turn bearish, and so that doesn't mean just because we're early in the daily cycle it's going to run for a long time, but that gives you some fuel that's actionable. On the daily, the Friday candle was a doji. The low was $77.38 and the high was $80.05. So that gives you some clear levels that you need to break above or below to confirm which side this thing wants to go. And all the other ones are moving in the same direction. URA, similar thing. There was 2 weeks of consolidation. We've now made a nice little higher high, and they're all in a similar position as well. They're on day 6 or 7 of a new daily cycle, having made a nice little low about a week ago. And again, big picture, nice little swing low back in April when the broader market, or nice little recovering off of a nice April low, just like the broader market. I mean, look at this candle. Look, sweeps these lows here. Imagine how many people got stopped out here, right? And you know how many people will chase eventually. This move is going to retrace at some point. I could see a world again. We're looking at URA here, ticker URA. I could see URA retracing back to like 35, 33 even, which sounds like a lot. But we've moved a lot in a short time, right? Like imagine being able to buy a candle that does something like that. Again, just like you could buy this candle that wiped out these lows. So that's URA. So uranium is looking good here. I am personally in oak low. Oak. So you can see this guy here trying to get back to all-time high, to get back to price discovery. So yeah, uranium is moving. So that's the update for today. Thanks for watching.